David with the Glory Drag Racing, and let's talk wheelie control. Wheelie control is in drag race features, and you can have a retard stage for ignition retard or cut stage for ignition cut. So I have ignition retard enabled. I'll enable the cut here for an example of both. Pitch angle sensor, you can have an external sensor wired into a white input, or if you have a FT550 light, FT550 or FT600, you can use the internal gyroscope. You can have a actuation on error with pitch angle sensor, actuation on error with ride height sensor. The retard stage mode, you can have always active, same thing for cut stage mode, or drag racing only. Ride height for retard stage, this you have to have a ride height sensor for, and it only works on always active. Same for the cut stage. Pitch angle for timing retard stage and cut stage. This opens up a table on the left hand side. So we have a height compensation table, a pitch angle compensation table, height cut table, and height angle cut table. For using height, you need a ride height sensor. And using drag racing only, we can do it by time and ride height. Same thing for drag racing only on pitch angle, time and pitch angle. When using always active, you can have a minimum cut duration. So it's similar like a sequential transmission where you have a cut, and timing retard return ramp. So if you have it always active, you don't have a table here, and you can put a timing retard in for the amount of pitch you have. So if it's 10 degrees of pitch, then at 10 degrees you're going to retard -20, and it's all linear. So you're going to start pulling timing before it gets to that point, and timing return ramp back in would be 1 second. You can have a timing retard output activation and an ignition cut output activation. Those are outputs that can trigger something, such as, say, a parachute, or maybe you can trigger a shift solenoid to shift the vehicle to try to bring it back down, something like that. So mostly we use drag race only, and that brings up our tables. So we have a pitch angle for timing retard stage, and we can do a pitch angle for cut stage. And here we have the pitch angle compensation table, pitch angle cut table. The pitch angle table, the axis doesn't look like this. I typically put this in, and to change this, you would right click on the axis, and you can change the rows. And so this is 5 degrees of pitch, 8 degrees of pitch, 10, 15, 20, and so on. If you're at 20 degrees of pitch on a motorcycle, you probably need to think about putting the front end down, unless you're purposely doing it. So I usually put a 20 degree at the top and then put a lot of negative timing into it. So this table is all linear. So at 1 degree of pitch, it's going to start pulling timing. Well, 0.1 degrees of pitch, it's going to start to pull timing. And the reason for that is because it's linear. So anything in between 0 and 5 degrees of pitch is going to start to pull timing. Up to 3 seconds. 3 seconds, it's not going to start to pull timing until it gets over 5 degrees of pitch. Same thing for ignition cut table. So we can see that the axis is different here. We can change this axis. 5, 8, 10, 15, and 20. So now this row axis looks comparable to our other axis. And we can start to pull ignition cut out of it. Say we want 10% of ignition cut there, but we want 30% here, and then we can vertically interpolate it, something like that. I normally personally just use the ignition angle instead of the ignition cut. And you can change this. So a lot of bikes, what they'll do is they'll actually squat because of the shock, and sometimes you will need 0 here, and then you won't want as much here. So say we want 5 degrees here, but we don't want it to pull timing after 3 seconds up to there. And we can customize this, so if it's getting more out of hand, then we can pull more timing out of it, and so on. So on these particular logs, we can see Wheelie Ignition Advanced Retard was pulling 8 degrees out of it at 4.2 degrees of pitch. And we can look at our ignition timing, and we can see that it pulled timing out based off of our pitch angle. And then it put it all back in here at 3 seconds, where we have the timing going back into it when it's above 5 degrees of pitch. Here's another log example. This pulled a maximum of 6.4 degrees at 3.2 degrees of pitch, and then put it back in at 3 seconds. And you can put it back in wherever you want. This is just where this bike is at. And we can see we changed the pitch angle on here. So once it got up to 5 degrees of pitch, then it started to pull timing. So at 5 degrees of pitch, it started to pull timing out of it. It got all the way up to 8 degrees and pulled a maximum of about 6.9 degrees, and then put it back in. And he was off the throttle here also, so it probably would have got a lot higher in pitch if he was on the throttle. But we can see that the ignition timing followed exactly what that did. And this is a good example of where you need to look to see if your wheelie control is working. You can also advance timing here. So if you're trying to get out of a wheelie, then you need to put negative numbers in here, and you need to be mindful of that because you can put positive numbers in. Calibrating your internal accelerometer. you have an internal accelerometer here, and we can see I have a FT600 next to me here. And we can go into the settings. So we're in sensors and calibration on the computer. We need to go into sensors and calibration on the FT600 or FT500, whatever you have. And we can see that it's a red foot pedal. So right here, sensors and calibration, we scroll down and find internal accelerometer. There we go. Then we rotate over, and we can see that both on the computer screen and on the FT600 what our frontal G and lateral G is just by moving it here. So we can calibrate on the computer to 0, or we can calibrate to 0 on the dashboard. And that's all we need to do. We can also see that we can do a pitch angle and a ride height sensor. And then we can go to Wheelie Control on our FT600 as well under Drag Race Features, Wheelie Control. And we can do the retard stage, and there is our timing table. And you can change it directly on your ECU. You don't need your computer to adjust. I hope this short video gives a better understanding of Wheelie Control and how to set it up and how it works based off the data logs that I showed you. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to put out more and more of these, so every subscription, every like, every view counts. Thank you.